Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Vincent Caldwell believed in order. It was the principle upon which he had built his life. His career as a senior investment analyst at one of Boston's most formidable firms. And his family. At 38, he managed portfolios worth 9 figures. His success derived from an uncanny ability to identify patterns, mitigate risque, and predict outcomes. His life was the ultimate blue-chip asset, stable, predictable, and yielding consistent returns. His routine was a testament to this philosophy. He rose at 5:30. The sky over their Brookline home, still a bruised purple. He would run exactly 5 miles. Shower. And then wake his twin daughters, Olivia and Ava, before heading to his office in the financial district. He would return home at precisely 6:30 in the evening, to their 2-story colonial with its impeccably manicured lawn. A perfect frame, for the perfect picture inside. Naomi, his wife of 12 years, was the portfolio's most volatile, if beautiful, component. At 35, she was the director of public relations for a luxury hotel chain. A job that required a certain social fluidity. That Vincent, in his world of numbers and hard data, found both admirable and faintly unnerving. He had supported her career, of course. He viewed it as a healthy diversion. A project that kept her occupied and fulfilled. He had been the architect of their life. And her success was, by extension, a credit to his design. But lately, her professional ascent felt less like a feature of his world, and more like an orbit, pulling away from its center. He recalled their beginning. He had been the confident, established analyst. She, the bright, ambitious intern at a competing firm. He had seen her potential. And had, in his own mind, molded it. He had guided her, protected her, provided the stable foundation from which she could launch. Now, she spoke of quarterly strategies and brand expansion with a confidence that felt entirely her own. It was a subtle shift. An almost imperceptible change in the market dynamics of their marriage. And it registered in Vincent's mind as a low-grade, persistent alert. Then there was the girls' night. Once a month, Naomi would go out with her colleagues. Dinners at chic, overpriced restaurants in the Back Bay. Events she described as essential for team bonding and unwinding from corporate pressure. Vincent never voiced an objection. To do so would have been illogical, a sign of weakness. Instead, he treated it with a calculated indifference. A minor, scheduled deviation, in an otherwise flawless system. But privately, he logged these evenings as liabilities. She always needs her own space, he would think. Watching her select a dress. As if this house, these children, this life I've given her, isn't enough. The thought was bitter. An acid reflux of insecurity he quickly suppressed. He would counter it with logic. A happy wife is a productive asset. He was a modern, supportive husband. He was allowing this. And so, he used those nights to reinforce his own role. Playing the dedicated father. Ordering pizza for the girls. And helping them assemble 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzles on the living room floor. He was performing his duties. Flawlessly. That was the narrative he maintained. It was clean. Orderly. And it made sense. But beneath the surface of the ledger, a debt of resentment was quietly accruing interest, waiting for the market to turn. That particular Friday in October had been grueling. Vincent had spent 10 hours in a boardroom, dissecting the financials of a hostile takeover. The numbers were aggressive. The stakes enormous. He felt the familiar thrill of the fight, of imposing order on chaos. When he finally walked through his front door at 7, the smell of Naomi's perfume, a scent he didn't recognize, hung in the air. She was in the hallway, adjusting an earring. She wore a deep crimson dress he had never seen before, its fabric clinging to her frame. Her heels were higher than usual, and her makeup was, to his analytical eye, more elaborate than necessary for a dinner with female colleagues. Her dark hair, usually tied back in a professional knot, fell in loose waves over her shoulders. She looked less like a PR director, and more like a statement of intent. "You look stunning," he said. The words. Automatic. He kissed her cheek, but his mind was already running calculations. The new dress. The unfamiliar perfume. The effort. These were data points that didn't align with the stated purpose of the evening. "Where are you all going tonight?" he asked, his tone level. "That new French place on Newbury Street," she replied, grabbing a small clutch. "Chloe's been dying to try it." She smiled at him, but Vincent saw it. A flicker of tension in her eyes. A micro-expression of anxiety he couldn't immediately categorize. It was the same look a CEO gets right before a disappointing earnings call. She kissed the twins goodnight and hurried out the door. Vincent watched her go. The red of her dress a slash of color against the dusk. He turned his attention to the girls, steering the evening back to its scheduled programming. They made popcorn, put on a movie, and he sat between them on the couch, a bulwark of paternal stability. It was around 10 o'clock when he finally got the girls to bed. The house fell silent. The only sound, the hum of the refrigerator. He went downstairs, retrieved a bottle of beer from the fridge, and sat in the dim light of the living room. He picked up his phone. Not idly, but with a sense of purpose. He opened Instagram. He told himself he was just unwinding. But he knew he was searching. The notification appeared almost instantly. Naomi had posted a photo. 15 minutes ago. The image showed her at a restaurant table, smiling. The lighting was low and intimate. The decor, classic French bistro. Beside her were Chloe and another colleague he vaguely recognized. All three women held glasses of champagne, their faces artfully arranged for the camera. The caption read, "Needed this, number girls night number Boston." He was about to like it. The perfunctory, supportive husband gesture. When his eyes caught on something in the background. Behind them was a large, paned window, its glass darkened by the night. And in that glass was a reflection. His heart didn't stop. It began to beat with a cold, steady rhythm. He zoomed in. The image became slightly pixelated. But the details were clear enough. In the reflection, unmistakably visible, was the silhouette of a man, sitting at their table. He was not at an adjacent table. The angle of his arm, resting on the back of the banquette, proved he was part of their group. Vincent's blood ran cold. But his mind was on fire. He zoomed in further. The man. Dark, sleeked back hair. A sharply tailored gray suit. Even in the distorted reflection, Vincent could see the glint of a heavy, expensive-looking watch. But it was his posture that sealed it. He was leaning toward Naomi, his shoulder almost touching hers. His head inclined, as if sharing a secret. Why would she post a photo captioned "Girls' Night" if a man was with them? Why the deliberate omission? The questions detonated in his head. But they were not questions of pain. They were the questions of an analyst who had just uncovered a fatal flaw in a company's financial statements. This was fraud. His hands were perfectly steady as he took several screenshots. He felt a surge of something dark and powerful. It wasn't just betrayal. It was vindication. His unease, his quiet suspicions, they weren't insecurities. They were accurate risk assessments. And this damning reflection, was the proof. It was hard data. It was undeniable. Emotion was a liability. Strategy was an asset. For years, Vincent had trained his mind to discard the former and embrace the latter. He sat in the silent house. The phone in his hand no longer a communication device, but a piece of evidence. He catalogued his next steps with the precision of a pre-trade checklist. Step 1, preserve the evidence. Done. Step 2, corroborate the lie. Without hesitation, he called Chloe. The phone rang 4 times before she answered. The background was loud with music and chatter. "Vincent, hi, is everything okay?" Her voice was strained, unnaturally high-pitched. She was a poor liar. "Chloe, I need you to be completely honest with me," he said, his voice low and calm, the tone he used to intimidate junior analysts into admitting their mistakes. "Who is the man sitting at the table with you?" Silence. A long, telling pause filled with the tinny sound of restaurant music. Then, What man? "It's just us girls here, you know how it is. Don't play dumb with me, Chloe," he said, his voice dropping further, cutting through her pretense. "I'm looking at the reflection in the window of the photo Naomi just posted. There is a man in a gray suit sitting with you. Who is he? More silence. Then she started to stammer. A clumsy, unconvincing story about a former colleague, named Richard, who just happened to be at the same restaurant, and stopped by to say hello. Vincent listened to the faltering explanation. Not with anger, but with the dispassionate satisfaction of an auditor who had just found the cooked books. Her panicked lies were the confirmation he needed. I see, he said, and hung up before she could say another word. He didn't need any more flawed data. The conclusion was clear. He moved quickly, efficiently. He went upstairs, his footsteps silent on the carpeted stairs. He grabbed his wallet and car keys from the dresser. He knocked on the door of their next-door neighbor, Mrs. Gable, an elderly widow who doted on the twins. She answered in her bathrobe, her face a mixture of surprise and concern. Mrs. Gable, I need an enormous favor, he said, his expression carefully calibrated to convey urgency and distress. I have a personal emergency. Can you stay with the girls for an hour or two? They're sound asleep. The look on his face must have been convincing. She agreed immediately. No questions asked. Gratitude was an inefficient emotion. He simply nodded and was already heading for the garage. He got into his black BMW, the engine humming to life with a low growl. He pressed the accelerator, the tires squealing softly as he pulled out of the driveway. During the 20-minute drive into downtown Boston, his mind was a high-speed processor, re-evaluating 12 years of marriage through the lens of this new, definitive data point. Every late night at her office, every unexplained credit card charge, every moment of distraction. It all clicked into place, forming a neat, horrifying pattern of deceit. He recognized the restaurant from the photo's background details. Serafina's on Newbury. An expensive, romantic spot. As he drove, waves of anger washed over him, but it was a cold anger. An anger that clarified, rather than confused. 12 years. A life built together. 2 beautiful daughters. It wasn't the loss of love that enraged him, it was the breach of contract. The flagrant disregard for the terms of their partnership. This was a hostile takeover of his life. And he had been left completely exposed. He parked half a block away, sitting for a moment to regulate his breathing. A small part of him, the sentimental, illogical part, hoped for an innocent explanation. But the analyst, the man who trusted numbers and patterns above all else, knew what the reflection meant. Deliberate deception. Calculated betrayal. It was a catastrophic failure of his due diligence. He stepped out of the car and walked toward the restaurant, his stride purposeful. He was no longer just a husband. He was an auditor, arriving for a surprise inspection. The facade of Serafina's was elegant, its windows casting a warm, golden glow onto the cobblestone street. Vincent pushed through the heavy oak door and stepped inside. The atmosphere was exactly as it appeared in the photo. Soft lighting, crisp white tablecloths, the murmur of quiet conversation underscored by gentle jazz. A hostess approached with a practiced smile. Do you have a reservation? Vincent's gaze swept past her, scanning the dining room like a terminal, searching for a signal. His eyes locked on their target. In a corner booth, near one of the large windows, sat Naomi. She was laughing, her head tilted back, a champagne flute in her hand. Beside her sat her 2 friends, and next to Naomi, with his hand resting casually on the back of her seat, his fingers inches from her bare shoulder, was the man from the reflection. Dark hair, gray suit, expensive watch. Vincent crossed the room with firm, unwavering steps. Heads turned. Diners paused, forks halfway to their mouths, sensing the disruptive energy he carried. There was something in his posture, in the cold focus of his gaze, that announced a reckoning was imminent. Chloe saw him first. The color drained from her face. She nudged Naomi. A small, frantic gesture. Naomi turned. When her eyes met Vincent's, her smile froze, cracking like thin ice. The glass in her hand trembled, spilling a few crimson drops of champagne onto the white linen. It looked like blood. Vincent, she breathed, her face a mask of pure horror. She stood up abruptly, knocking her chair backward with a clatter that echoed through the suddenly quiet room. What are you doing here? He stopped exactly 1 meter from the table, creating a deliberate, confrontational space. He looked first at the other colleague, who immediately stared down at her plate. Then at Chloe, who looked as if she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. Then at the man in the suit, who was now also standing, a flicker of alarm in his eyes. Finally, Vincent's gaze settled on his wife. "Girls' night, Naomi," he said. His voice was low, controlled. But each word was laced with ice. "An interesting concept. Tell me, since when does girls' night include a man in a suit?" Naomi opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Tears welled in her eyes, turning them glassy. "Because here's the thing," Vincent continued, pulling his phone from his pocket. He opened the saved screenshot and held it out for them all to see. The screen glowing in the dim light. "When I saw this lovely picture you posted, with that cute little caption, I almost liked it. Until I noticed one small detail." He zoomed in on the reflection, turning the phone so the man could see himself captured in the glass. "This reflection. The one that clearly shows a man sitting with you. Funny how technology reveals the truths we try so hard to hide, isn't it?" The silence that followed was absolute. The drama at their table had become a spectator sport for the entire restaurant. The man in the suit swallowed hard and finally spoke. "Look, man, I think you're misunderstanding the situation." "You think?" Vincent turned his cold gaze on him. "Then please, enlighten me. Help me understand who you are. And why you're at a girls' night my wife assured me was just for her and her friends." The man hesitated, glancing at Naomi as if for guidance. That glance was all the confirmation Vincent needed. It was an admission of a shared conspiracy. "I'm Richard Sterling," the man said, his voice tight. "I'm the regional director of development at Naomi's company." "Director of development," Vincent repeated the words slowly, savoring them. "And you regularly attend these team-building exercises?" "Richard?" Richard didn't answer. Naomi, now openly crying, reached for Vincent's arm. "Vincent, please. Can we talk about this at home? Not here." He pulled his arm away, as if her touch were an electric shock. "No. We'll talk about it here. Now." "In front of him," he said, gesturing to Richard. "In front of them," he pointed to her silent, complicit friends. "In front of everyone who needs to see exactly who you are." "You're making a scene," Naomi whispered desperately. "I'm making a scene?" Vincent's voice rose for the first time. Sharp and cutting. "Me? You lied to me, Naomi. You stood in our home and lied to my face. You posted a public photograph that made a fool out of me. Pretending you were at some innocent dinner while you were here with him. You didn't just betray me. You publicly humiliated me. And I'm the one making a scene?" Tears streamed down her perfectly made-up face, carving dark tracks of mascara through her foundation. Her composure, her professional mask, had shattered completely. "It's not what you think," Naomi pleaded. Her voice choked with sobs. The words were a pathetic cliché. An insult to his intelligence. "Then tell me what it is," Vincent countered, crossing his arms. He was in complete control now. He was the prosecutor, the judge, and the jury. "Tell me how long this has been going on. Tell me how many girls' nights were actually dates with Richard. Tell me how long you've been using our daughters as your alibi." The mention of the twins was a calculated blow, and it landed with devastating force. Naomi flinched as if struck. It was Richard who finally broke the silence, his voice low. "Look. It started 6 months ago. At the conference in Chicago. It wasn't planned. It just happened. 6 months." The number echoed in Vincent's mind. 6 months of systematic deception. 180 days of lies. The scale of the fraud was breathtaking. He felt the floor drop away for a second. But he held his ground. His composure. An iron mask. 6 months you've been lying to me," he said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. 6 months you've kissed our daughters goodnight after being with him. 6 months you've slept in my bed. Naomi was sobbing uncontrollably now, her words tumbling out in a desperate, incoherent stream. "Vincent, I love you. I love our girls. It was a mistake. A terrible mistake. I was going to end it. I swear." "You were going to end it," he repeated, letting out a short, humorless laugh. "When? After one more dinner?" After one more lie posted on social media for the world to see? He gestured around the table. At the half-eaten plates of expensive food, the champagne, the flickering candlelight. I hope you all enjoyed your meal. Because this is the last time. He turned back to Naomi, his final judgment delivered with chilling finality. When you get home, if you decide to come home, your things will be in the garage. I've already messaged Robert Cole. You remember Robert? My partner from the firm? The one who specializes in high-asset divorce. He'll be expecting your lawyer's call on Monday. No, she gasped, grabbing for his arm again. Please, Vincent. Think about the girls. He looked at her one last time, his eyes as cold and hard as granite. I think about the girls every single day. And that's precisely why I will not allow them to grow up in a house where lies and betrayal are normalized. They deserve to learn that actions have consequences. He took a step back, then looked at Richard. And you? I hope she was worth it. Because when the board of directors finds out their regional director is having an affair with a subordinate, I'm sure their ethics committee will be fascinated by the legal exposure. Richard's face went pale. Vincent didn't wait for a response. He turned and walked toward the exit. The eyes of every person in the restaurant following him. Behind him, he heard Naomi cry out his name, her voice raw with despair. He didn't look back. Outside, the cold October air hit him like a physical blow. He walked quickly to his car, got in, and locked the doors. Only then, in the sterile privacy of the German-engineered vehicle, did he allow the reality to settle. He gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles turning white. He didn't cry. Crying was an unproductive expenditure of energy. Instead, a cold, methodical rage filled him. The betrayal was a problem to be solved. A hostile entity to be neutralized and liquidated. His phone buzzed. It was Naomi. He declined the call. It buzzed again. He turned the phone off. He took a deep, steadying breath, started the engine, and drove home to secure his assets. He arrived to find Mrs. Gable reading a book in the living room. She looked at him, her eyes full of a wisdom that asked no questions. The girls never stirred, she said softly. After she left, he walked upstairs and looked into the twins' room. They were asleep, their faces peaceful. Oblivious to the controlled demolition of their family that had just taken place. This, he told himself, was for them, to protect them. He went down to his home office and turned on his computer. He sent a detailed email to Robert Cole, outlining the situation and requesting an urgent meeting. Then he opened the shared family iCloud account. It didn't take long to find what he was looking for. Automatically synced text messages between Naomi and a contact saved only as R. The conversations were explicit, damning, and dated back months. He screenshotted everything, creating a password-protected folder. He organized the evidence. The Instagram photo. The text messages. A timeline of her girls' nights. With the meticulous care he would use to build a case against a rival corporation. Around 2 a.m, a car pulled into the driveway. He heard the front door handle rattle. He had already engaged the deadbolt and the security chain. The knocking started, soft at first, then more desperate. Vincent, please. Let me in. We need to talk. He sat in the dark, listening to her pleas. He felt nothing. After 20 minutes, she gave up. He heard her car drive away. Only then, did he close his eyes. Phase 1 was complete. The days that followed were a blur of strategic maneuvers. Vincent officially retained Robert Cole and filed for divorce in Suffolk County Court. Massachusetts was a no-fault state, meaning the affair wouldn't directly impact the division of assets. But Vincent wasn't interested in assets. He was interested in victory. He used the mountain of evidence he had compiled to build a powerful case for sole custody, arguing that Naomi's prolonged campaign of deception demonstrated a pattern of poor judgment and instability that was detrimental to the children's welfare. Then, he executed his final, decisive action. He learned that Richard Sterling was married, with 3 young children. Using an anonymous, encrypted email service, he sent a neatly organized file containing the screenshots of the text messages and the Instagram photo to 2 recipients, Richard's wife, and the head of human resources at Naomi's company. The bomb detonated within 48 hours. Richard was fired following an internal investigation that confirmed an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate, a clear violation of corporate policy. His marriage, Vincent later heard through the grapevine, publicly imploded. Naomi's life unraveled in tandem. She was placed on administrative leave from her job. Her professional reputation shattered. She tried desperately to speak with Vincent, sending texts, letters, leaving voicemails filled with apologies and pleas for a second chance. All communications were ignored, or routed through his lawyer. For Vincent, trust was a binary concept. Once it was switched to off, the circuit was permanently broken. The divorce took 6 months. Vincent, armed with superior legal counsel and character evidence that painted Naomi as a reckless and untrustworthy parent, secured his primary objective: primary physical custody of Olivia and Ava. The house, which had been purchased with a down payment from a trust his parents had established, remained his. The remaining assets were divided according to the law. But Vincent's position was unassailable. Naomi, stripped of her family, her career in jeopardy, was forced to start over. She rented a small apartment across the river in Cambridge, and faced the silent judgment of a world that had once admired her. A year after that night at Serafina's, Vincent's life had been restructured. He had obsessively focused on fatherhood, recalibrating his work schedule to be home every night for dinner. He coached the girls' soccer team. He took them to museums on weekends. He had even started attending a support group for divorced fathers, carefully curating a narrative of a devoted father, betrayed, and left to pick up the pieces. He was building a new, more resilient portfolio. He never looked at the Instagram photo again. He knew Naomi had deleted it in a panic that night, but his screenshot was safely archived in his legal files, a permanent record of the moment the data became clear. The image was burned into his memory anyway. Naomi's false smile, the deceitful caption, and the ghost in the glass that had exposed it all. Sometimes, on quiet nights after the girls were asleep, he would think about that moment. He would feel a surge of pride in his own decisiveness. His refusal to prolong the agony. He had identified the cancer, and cut it out. Swiftly, and without sentiment. On an autumn afternoon, a year and 2 months after that fateful Friday, Vincent was at a park in Brookline with the twins. He pushed them on the swings, their laughter echoing in the crisp air as they screamed, "Higher, Daddy, higher." The setting sun painted the Boston skyline in shades of orange and pink. He looked at his daughters, their faces alight with pure, uncomplicated joy. And he felt something he identified as peace. It wasn't the life he had originally planned. It was a revised forecast, an adjusted projection. But it was a life built on a foundation of truth. His truth. It was a life of order, reclaimed from chaos. A life of dignity, salvaged from humiliation. And that, Vincent realized, as he listened to his daughter's laughter, was infinitely more valuable than any illusion of happiness built on fraudulent data. The photo remained in its digital file, an artifact of a closed chapter. He never needed to see it again. The lesson had been learned. The market always corrects itself. And the truth, eventually, always comes to light. Even if it's just in an accidental reflection in a restaurant window. He had rebuilt everything from the wreckage. A perfect, orderly world, where only his version of the truth existed. And he was certain that this, finally, was happiness. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next.